What happens when one of Hollywood's most unpredictable forces collides head-on with daytime TV's most unfiltered provocateur? What begins as a polite chat about a new movie erupts into one of the most combustible, jaw-dropping moments ever aired live. Prepare yourself, you're about to see Nicolas Cage as you've never seen him before. Raw, electric, and gloriously unrestrained. You won't believe what comes out of his mouth. Before we roll the footage, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Now, back to the storm. Inside the View studio, the air crackled like static before a lightning strike. Cameras glowed red, the audience hummed with anticipation, and Nicolas Cage, wearing that unmistakable mix of charisma and chaos, eased into the guest chair. He was there to promote his latest thriller, but across the table sat Joy Behar, grinning like a cat that had already spotted its prey. Her smirk widened, a silent warning that this wasn't going to be your average press junket. It was about to become a duel. Joy leaned in, voice dripping with theatrical curiosity. "I've got to ask about your financial troubles a few years back. I mean, buying castles and dinosaur skulls. Pretty irresponsible, wasn't it?" The words sliced through the air like glass. A ripple of unease moved through the audience. Cage didn't flinch, but something behind his eyes shifted, an intensity flickering to life. "Well, Joy," he said, voice calm but edged with iron, "that's a reductive way to frame someone's life choices. I made investments. Some succeeded. Some didn't. That's called being human." A murmur rolled through the crowd, half sympathy, half suspense. Joy laughed, sharp and performative, glancing toward the audience for backup. "Investments," she echoed, her tone gleaming with mockery. "Is that what we're calling a pyramid tomb now? Come on, Nicholas, some of those purchases were downright bonkers." The jab hung in the air like a live wire. Whoopi Goldberg shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension rising like steam from a kettle about to whistle. "Maybe we should focus on the movie," she suggested, her tone light but edged with caution. Joy wasn't interested in detours. She leaned in, eyes gleaming with mischief. No, people want to know this stuff. Let's be honest, Nicholas, you've made some really questionable choices on screen, too. Like that movie where you fought animatronic animals in a pizza joint. What was that even about?" The smirk on her face was razor-sharp. Across from her, Cage's expression hardened. A flicker, something primal and electric, lit behind his eyes. He straightened in his chair, the air around him suddenly alive with heat. "You know, Joy," he said, his tone deceptively calm, "I find it fascinating that someone who's made a career sitting at a table talking about what others create feels qualified to critique people who actually do create." The studio went dead silent. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Joy's practiced grin faltered for a heartbeat before she plastered it back on, lashing out with forced laughter. "Art? Is that what you call screaming about bees or hopping around in a bunny suit? Come on, Nicholas, some of your movies are legendary flops." The smile slipped from Cage's face. He wasn't angry, he was awake. His voice deepened, threaded with that peculiar mix of poetry and defiance only he could conjure. "I own every single one of them," he said. "Every role, every decision, every madness and miracle. That's the difference between you and me. You sit behind a desk and play it safe. I step into the fire." A murmur swept through the audience. The tension was palpable now, humming in the lights overhead. Sarah Haynes tried to steer things back to sanity. "Nicholas, maybe tell us a bit about your new film," Joy cut her off, her tone dripping with mockery. "Oh, let me guess. Another Nicolas Cage movie where Nicolas Cage plays." Nicolas Cage. Do you even act anymore, or do you just show up and be weird? The audience gasped. Cage's stillness was unnerving, like the pause before an explosion. Then, with terrifying calm, he leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. His voice dropped to a low growl, more dangerous than a shout. "Joy, I am weird, but at least I'm real. You want to know about acting, Joy?" Cage's voice cut through the tension, low but charged with heat. "Acting is truth. It's the art of stripping yourself bare, finding the ugliest, rawest part of your soul, and offering it to strangers. It's about bleeding in public and calling it performance. It's commitment, absolute, unrelenting commitment. Something most people could never stomach." Joy rolled her eyes in an exaggerated arc, her laugh sharp enough to slice glass. Oh, spare me the monologue, Nick. You're not Marlon Brando. You're the guy who screams about stealing the Declaration of Independence. The audience tittered nervously. The insult landed like a dart, but Cage didn't flinch. His voice hardened, his words slicing back with surgical precision. And you're the woman who mistakes mockery for wit. At least when I create something, I give it everything I've got. I don't deal in half measures. I don't sit at a desk and pretend tearing others down is a contribution to culture. A collective gasp rippled through the studio. The air was thick with disbelief and thrill. Joy's smile faltered, her cheeks reddening as her tone rose, edged with fury. "I've been in this business longer than you've been alive, sweetheart," she snapped. "I've interviewed presidents, covered wars, told real stories while you were figuring out which relative got you into the industry." That one hit bone. The reference to the Coppola family name drew a visible flash in Cage's eyes, a spark of pure, dangerous rage. When he spoke again, his voice carried the force of a storm barely contained. "There it is," he said quietly. "When you can't win an argument, you claw for something cheap. For the record, I earned my place here, through decades of work, through discipline, through risking everything on art. I've done what safe talk show hosts like you would never have the courage to do." Joy's composure fractured. Her voice came out shrill, defensive. "Safe? You think what I do is safe? Try sitting here every day with millions judging every word you say. Try living under that pressure." Cage leaned forward until his presence filled the space between them. His voice dropped, dark and deliberate. "The difference, Joy," he said, "is that I'm judged for what I create. You're judged for who you destroy. There's a world of difference between being criticized for art and being criticized for cruelty." The audience gasped, half thrilled, half terrified. The polite dance of daytime TV had crumbled into a duel, and there was no pulling back. Joy's palm slammed against the table with a crack that echoed through the studio. "Cruel? I'm not cruel, I'm honest. Someone has to tell the truth about these absurd movies you make. Ghost Rider? A flaming skeleton on a motorcycle? What adult thinks that's cinema?" Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, but Cage didn't even blink. His expression hardened into marble, his voice dropping low enough to freeze the air. "You know what, Joy? I'm starting to understand why people change the channel when you start talking." The studio collectively inhaled. The silence that followed was electric, tense, fragile, and crackling with disbelief. Joy's face contorted, flickering between outrage and wounded pride before she snapped back like a whip. "Did you just insult my ratings? My show has been on the air for decades. Millions tune in specifically to hear me." Cage tilted his head, eyes like lasers. "And yet, here you are using that platform to tear people down instead of lifting up ideas. Tell me, Joy, when was the last time you created something that made people feel joy instead of just stirring up outrage?" Joy's smile wavered. "I create conversation," she retorted, her voice trembling with forced certainty. "I create dialogue about important issues." Cage arched a brow, his tone dripping with quiet scorn. "Important issues like mocking someone's career? Like ridiculing their creative risks? If that's your definition of dialogue, maybe the real problem isn't my films, it's your understanding of what matters." Sonny Hostin's voice cut through, soft and pleading. "Maybe we can all just take a breath here." No, Joy's interruption was a gunshot. She jabbed a finger across the table at Cage. "I'm not backing down. You come on my show acting like some tortured genius, but let's be real, you've been making garbage for years. At least I've got the guts to say it." That did it. Cage stood, his height swallowing the table in shadow. His entire body hummed with barely restrained fury. "Garbage!" His voice cracked like thunder. "You want to talk about garbage? Garbage is tearing people down to get ratings. Garbage is using influence to poison creativity instead of celebrating it. Garbage is mistaking cruelty for honesty." Joy shot to her feet, shaking. "Don't you dare lecture me about honesty. You're an actor, Nicholas. You pretend for a living. I deal with real issues, real politics, real problems." Cage laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Real problems? The only problem I see is that you can't stand what you don't understand. When you see something bold or strange, you tear it down to feel safe again. That's your craft, Joy. Not journalism. Not insight. Just destruction. The studio buzzed like a live wire. Whoopi Goldberg was signaling frantically to the producers, but no one dared cut to commercial. Joy's voice rose, thin and venomous. Maybe destruction's exactly what's needed. Someone has to say it. Your so-called acting is just yelling and making weird faces. You're the emperor with no clothes, and the audience finally noticed. Cage leaned forward, his tone now deadly calm, almost reverent. My acting, Joy, comes from years of training. From Sanford Meisner. From studying the method. From giving every cell in my body to a role. What's your training, exactly? What qualifies you to measure art? Joy fired back instantly, trembling but defiant. Life experience. Common sense. The ability to call something ridiculous when it is ridiculous. Their eyes locked, his a storm, hers a blade, and for a single unbearable second, the room felt like it might combust. Cage shook his head slowly, the faintest trace of pity in his eyes. You know what's really ridiculous, Joy? Building an entire career out of mocking people braver than you. Sitting behind a desk, pointing, laughing, while others risk failure chasing something meaningful. That's ridiculous. That's your legacy. Joy's laugh came out too loud, brittle as glass. Legacy? What legacy do you have? Screaming about stealing the Constitution? Playing cartoon cowboys and leather-clad lunatics? That's not a legacy, Nicholas. That's a paycheck for overacting. Cage's tone turned glacial. And what you do isn't even that. When I overact, at least I'm trying to give people something unforgettable. You, his voice sharpened, you just sit there wrapped in smugness, pretending cruelty is commentary. The panel dissolved into chaos. Anna Navarro tried to interject, her voice quivering. Nicholas, your fans love you for your passion, Joy cut across her. His fans? Teenagers who think loud equals funny. Mature audiences want subtlety, not a circus act in sunglasses. Cage's head snapped toward her, his voice booming. Mature audiences? You mean the ones who tune in just to watch you bully guests and gossip about celebrities? That's your idea of sophistication. Joy faltered. I don't bully anyone. I ask tough questions. I hold people accountable. Accountable for what? Cage thundered. For making choices you don't like? For daring to be different? For refusing to play it safe, the way you always have? The words hit her like stones. Her face flushed crimson. Play it safe? You think this job is safe? Sitting here every day dealing with people like you, facing constant criticism, do you think that's easy? Cage's reply was quiet, deadly precise. The difference is that I'm criticized for creating. You're criticized for destroying. One of those things leaves the world richer. The other leaves it emptier. For the first time, Joy hesitated. A flicker of vulnerability flashed before hardening into fury. How dare you come into my house and pretend to be some tortured genius when everyone knows you're just a has-been riding your uncle's coattails? The mention of Francis Ford Coppola hit like an explosion. Cage froze. His eyes narrowed, twin blades of fire. When he spoke, his voice was pure steel. And why uncle's coattails? You want to go there, Joy? Fine. Let's talk about your rise. Let's talk about how Joy Behar became Joy Behar. Her confidence cracked. That's completely different, and you know it. Is it? Cage stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the table. From where I'm standing, it looks like someone who's never created anything meaningful tearing into someone who's given everything to his craft. And now that you're losing, you want to make it personal. The studio had gone silent. Cameras rolled, breathless. Joy's voice rose to a trembling shriek. You made it personal when you insulted my intelligence, my career, my viewers. You think you're some misunderstood genius, but you're a joke. Cage's laugh was sharp and venomous. A joke? The real joke is that you think tearing people down makes you important. You've worn cruelty so long you can't even tell it apart from honesty anymore. Joy's face was scarlet. Honesty? What's honest about wasting people's time with terrible movies? About pretending your overacting is art. Cage's hand slammed against the table with the force of a thunderclap. What's honest, he roared, is that I try. I risk. I fail. I succeed. I bleed for every role I take. I step into the arena while you sit safely in the stands, mocking those who dare. The audience held its collective breath. Joy's voice shook with rage. You're no artist. You're a washed-up has-been clinging to relevance. Cage leaned forward until his face was inches from hers, his tone now eerily calm. And you? You're a bully with a microphone. You've mistaken noise for relevance, cruelty for courage, and gossip for journalism. And the saddest part is, you actually think that makes you powerful. The silence was absolute. Joy opened her mouth, but no sound came. For the first time in her career, she was speechless on her own stage. Cage adjusted his jacket, composed, regal. Thank you for the invitation, Joy. I hope your viewers enjoyed watching you unravel. He turned and strode off the set as cameras captured the stunned faces of the hosts. The audience erupted, some cheering, some booing, but no one could deny what they'd witnessed. Nicolas Cage had delivered a takedown so fierce, so unfiltered, it instantly became the most talked-about moment in daytime television history. Joy Behar stood in the wreckage of her own show, and Hollywood's most unpredictable actor had just walked away victorious. Now the question remains, whose side are you on? Did Joy go too far, or did Cage's fury cross the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more moments this explosive.